All right, ladies. Well, thanks for joining us today. I'm always excited to get a chance for us all to get together and chat a little bit. I know we work from home, and so maybe I talk a little bit too much to my dog and my cat. So it's nice to have somebody else to chat with. But we wanted to get together today and talk about anxiety and some tips for helping out our kiddos who may be managing anxiety and some of those anxious symptoms. And I think maybe a little bit about us as parents, and if we as adults have anxiety, or tips for those around us with anxiety. So you guys have any great tips to get us started off on?
Well, what's interesting is I attended a webinar yesterday for, it was Mental Health Day,
Oh,
and
yes.
and I learned a lot about self-care and anxiety, and it was amazing. It was more geared towards the parent side, but anxiety is, we have to take care of ourselves, right? And we talk a lot about self-care, and um, it's finding something that you enjoy to do. It doesn't, your self-care, when it's tied into anxiety, it doesn't have to be I'm going for a massage, or I'm going to get my nails done, or a massive vacation. It could be something little to help your anxiety. You can literally, go outside and, take a little walk for 10 minutes. Something that you enjoy, that finds you fulfillment, will, I think, lessen your anxiety. And it's part of like self-care. That's kind of the gist of yesterday. So it was finding things that will help lessen that, that the stuff, all that minutia in your head and your heart that is everywhere, is finding something that you enjoy. And it could be 10 minutes, it could be 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be, an hour massage once a month, or I have to go to a big spa and spend $300. So that's what helps. I learned that, wow, I need to do some more smaller things to fill my bucket up with smaller things. It doesn't have to be a trip to a
Aruba.
ski resort or somewhere.
Right? Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think we talk about self-care a lot, and we do kind of talk about that because, yeah, I think people think self-care is that weekend away. But if you only wait for that weekend away,
mhm,
then a weekend might not help
mhm.
because you may be so behind and it just may not be long enough. So, yeah, I love the idea of doing those small things. And I mean, I can say this week has already been a massive nightmare with having so much to do that I can definitely feel more stress and anxiety. It's like this downward spiral
Yeah.
where you need to kind of stop and take a break, but because there's so much, you can't stop and take a break, which makes it even worse, which, you know, which then makes you feel even worse. You need to stop and take a break, but it just becomes like that catch 22.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that one thing that I've always talked to my daughter about with anxiety is the breathing. Because I think even at school, when she comes across something that she becomes anxiety ridden and she just is kind of panicking. Obviously, when we have that coming up, we definitely start to kind of hyperventilate and our breathing becomes faster. And so we've always, since I don't know, when she was little, we always did like the square, and it was just like taking deep breath in and you draw the square, and then by the time it gets up to the corner, then you're letting it out and you're drawing the square, each time you're taking that breath in and breath out, because I think that that's helping you to calm your nerves, calm your brain, and calm your thought process. And then it's like, okay, now I can handle myself a little bit better than just 5 minutes ago. And you do that square a little bit, maybe 3 or 4 times, just to kind of regulate those the breathing, kind of calm yourself down.
Yeah, I love that. And it's been
Yeah, I like
known, it's been known to drop blood pressure. Like when you do those deep, not the breathing that comes from it's that deep belly breath, like you're saying,
Right.
think about it and draw that square. it's been known to drop, your blood pressure numbers down to regulate and settle yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't obviously have to show the square. Like you don't have to
Mhm.
physically be showing the square, but like visualizing yourself. If like you're in a room, or a classroom, you're like, okay, I'm not going to draw it in my mind. I'm going to calm myself and I'm going to just center myself into that. Because I know I've gotten a lot of phone calls from school and she would be panicking. And I'm like, okay, if you can't do that, then let me talk to you. All right, you're going to take a deep breath. You're going to take it down a little bit, and being able to like just talk her through things.
Yeah. Oddly enough, yesterday I did a presentation. I did a webinar on mental health in schools. And we did talk a lot about anxiety and how children's symptoms of anxiety can be different from adults. And a lot of people don't think about that. But one of the things that shocked me when I learned it was that angry outbursts, um, are a sign of both childhood anxiety and childhood depression. And in the presentation, then at the end, people were asking questions and we were kind of talking, because we were talking about what can schools do. And obviously schools don't have a whole lot of money. And right now they're really kind of overtaxed. But I know in north central Pennsylvania, there are a lot of schools that are doing calming rooms, almost like the Zen
Mm-hmm.
Den that we had at the conference. But this is just a room with a lot of soft fabrics, softer lighting, quiet music that's just instrumental, maybe some aromatherapy or even just scents in the room that are known for promoting calm, having things like, adult coloring books, even if they're kiddos. Any day I can color is a good day. Different chairs to sit in, like a blanket to cover yourself with. So having places like that for our children to go. And we talked about the benefits of taking that breath, like you said. And one of the things that I encourage them to do is, as a teacher, you can work with your students. We know that there's been some shown benefits of doing like a little bit of meditation in the morning, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be tied to any kind of religious practice, but that mindfulness. And if a teacher can model that in front of the classroom. So maybe we're
Mm-hmm.
getting ready to take our test and I'm going to take a big deep breath and I'm going to hold it and I'm going to let it out. And if you'd like to join me, that's great. To model that for her students. And one of the things, there was an art therapist who was attending the presentation. And, she said that often when you see somebody take a breath like that, it's almost like a yawn, where somebody yawns and you yawn. When you see somebody take a breath like that, it's almost like instinctive where you're like, and then you do it as well. And one of my favorite things during the pandemic was that LeVar Burton, in the beginning of the pandemic, would read, and he got permission from an awful lot of authors to be able to read their books over the air. And Neil Gaiman was one of them. And so LeVar would always say, I think he was reading like maybe on Twitter or something like that. And, you could see him and he'd say, before I read, before I record, I take a big deep breath and you're all welcome to join me in that. And that was like my favorite thing in the week, because I was like, I need to go breathe with LeVar Burton.
And also having our feet on the ground, like
Oh, yeah.
having yourself, like grounding yourself, because I've been in those rooms where they're like, okay, now take a deep breath, but they also say, get your feet on the floor, flat on the floor, like touching the ground also is a lot of, like grounding. Another thing that I've also told my daughter to do is kind of identify some things in the room. Like, think about how pick 3 things in the room and just, you can call them out to me. Or you can say in your head, okay, I see a pen, I see a clock. And okay, I can focus on those items in
Mm-hmm.
the room and they kind of distract you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
Yeah. They say do that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it could be like 5 things you see, 4 things you can
Yeah.
touch, 3
Mm-hmm.
things you could smell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to get you out of your head and get you more present around you. So yeah, I love that idea. I love that idea.
And
Anything
I
else
think our
interesting? Oh,
schools
go ahead.
have started. I'm sorry, Christina. I think a lot of schools have started using these calming rooms. I know that I've talked to a few, and one got a grant, and they built this room up, and they put a lot of sensory items in this room. But if your school can't do that, I mean, have a fundraiser, like get a small room just so that kids can come into that room and refocus,
Mm-hmm.
engage themselves, because I think that that's important for them to learn, as going into an adulthood.
And it's so
Sounds
hard
like a
for
great
kids.
PTA project.
Right.
Sorry,
That
go
sounds
ahead.
Yes,
awesome.
yes.
That is
Yeah.
amazing. It's just, our kiddos and our young adults they've got so many things, so many things to consider and to think about than we did. I don't want to date ourselves, but we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media, like seriously. So they just have,
Thank goodness.
yeah, right, right. How about it? And there's just so many more, ways for their little minds and their young adult minds to just get caught up in some scary stuff. And it's a lot. So they do need, I loved the breathing. I know with my youngest son, we did yoga when he was still physically able to. And, later on when he's in a power chair, he has a lot of blood draws and things. So we really did focus on that deep breathing to calm himself down because, your body does reflect when you're anxious. Your arteries and your blood vessels, everything tightens up, everything gets elevated and escalated. So I'm glad you brought that up about the breath because it's life, right? Breathing is life, and you have to be able to use that and know how to use that. So
Yeah. And I think that that's another, like, like if somebody models that breathing for you, and then, you can take a deep breath and kind of then say to somebody, now think about where your shoulders were before, and are your shoulders farther away from your ears now? Because
Mhm.
like you were saying, when we get tense, and I'm terrified of needles, absolutely terrified of needles. And, for me, if I have to go for a blood draw, I, which only makes it worse.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think talking our children through, and then afterwards, at a time when it's appropriate, debriefing with them
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
talk through what worked, how did they feel, can make them mindful and imprint, this worked last time.
Yeah.
So it makes them recognize that this was a technique we tried and that worked for us. Yeah.
Something else that you said, Pearl, that kind of like resonated was, because we didn't have social media, we didn't have cell phones when we were growing up. It also is something that we try to do a lot around our home, is taking those social breaks, because it can be so anxiety ridden. Like, I've seen my daughter go into a complete spiral just because something, it maybe somebody's not responding to her. Well, they read it. So then she's starting to, get this anxiety. Well, why aren't they calling me back? Or what did I do? And then she starts thinking the negative thoughts. And at that point, it's like, okay, let's take a break. We're not going to just breathe at this point. We're going to put this phone down, and we're going to just say, not right now. We're not worrying about this phone. We're not worried about a conversation that's happening or not happening, but we need to disengage from that cell phone a lot, because I think that that's also what our kids are exposed to a lot of. And that and kind of brings on anxiety a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah.
And I would say, in that situation as well, because we've been there as well, I try to tell my son, and my older boys, when you're in that state and I'm trying to, mom and dad are trying to help you, let's find something that we'd like to do. What do you want to do? Like, what do you enjoy? I like to run. I like to go to a football game, and then, okay, let's try to make that happen. So again,
Mhm.
you're taking that social media piece away, or let's find something joyful that you like
Yes.
and let's do it.
Yeah.
Even if it's let's go outside and go for a 5-minute walk, or let's go look at the cornfields, or let's go anywhere. I mean, just something, turning it around and finding something joyful that they like, that the person in crisis, because what I
Right.
like might be different than my 17-year-old in a power chair, right?
Yes.
So yeah, try to find something good that they like to do, and then to flip it around, and
Well, and
almost like the 5-4-3 technique, where you're trying to just switch their brain into something else.
Yeah.
and that's where the idea of the emotional safety planning tip sheet came from. So I know you're new and you may not have seen it yet, but we have a tip sheet. It was maybe our second one created. I don't know for sure, but it's been around for a while. It's called the Emotional Safety Planning Tip Sheet. And the thought is that when you're already stressed out, maybe when you're already anxious, it's almost too late. You were using the more primitive part of your brain, so you may be unable to problem solve and think rationally. That's anxiety, right? So in advance, you write down these are things that relax me or de-stress me, or this is a plan for breaking that stress cycle. And so you actually write it down. And on one side of the tip sheet, it gives you instructions on how to do it. On the other side, it's just a place to write it down. You don't even need to print it. You could write it on a piece of paper. And we encourage parents to write themselves an emotional safety planning tip sheet or safety plan, and their then model for that, and then do one with their child. And the big key to making it work is you have to recognize it's there, and you have to try these, make sure that it's a like an iterative process. So you're not just going to write it once and never edit it. You're going to write it, and it may be different in the summer than in the winter. It may be easier for you to throw on a pair of shoes and go for a run in the spring, summer, and fall. So you may have to have something different on the list for the winter. But go through, edit it, make sure as your interests change, you change, but your activities change, but keep it somewhere handy, keep it somewhere visible. And the idea is, if you can catch yourself, like, so me, maybe last night, if I could catch myself, stress got too much for me, I could have a plan for knocking it right out. So I could sit here and I can obsess about everything I have to do, or I could do this activity from my emotional safety plan. And there's different levels of things, because you may not always be able to do every single one, but they could be very simple things, like listening to your favorite playlist, going for a run, taking the dog for a walk, calling a friend, throwing on a show that you like. So it doesn't have to be anything, painting your nails, right? It doesn't have to be anything major. But it's the idea of thinking about it in advance and writing it down. And so the way you were talking, Pearl, it would be great if your kiddos had those written down. And then for you as a parent, if you see that they're starting to get anxious, or you're concerned about them getting stressed out, you could say, hey, why don't we go for a walk?
Right. And it's amazing that you mentioned that, because there's a family that I was helping earlier today, and she's the first person that popped in my head for this emotional planning. It's awesome. So I'm gonna put that in my notes to get that to her soon. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of tip sheets. I haven't seen that one yet.
That brings up something that we did actually for my daughter when she was a lot younger. We called it a calming box.
Oh yeah.
And we put everything in this box that would help her. It could be the coloring books and some coloring crayons or pencils, and fidget toys, or it could be anything that you can put in this box that then when you identify it, let's get out that emotional safety tip, and let's get out your calming box. What's in that calming box that you can pull out right now, just to start regulating those emotions. I think we had so many things in that calming box, and it lasted for so long, and we kind of went back to it. Okay, let's change this box up and find out something different, because now you're getting a little older. Let's put something else in there, and I think that something also that we could put in these boxes is aromatherapy,
Yeah.
things that senses that change. There's a lot of citrusy smells that can really help. We also got one of these a diffuser, and it would have colors, and you could put the smell in there, and then you could change the colors as it's in the room. That always helped her to calm down, and we've always played like certain sounds also if in a room, like some rain or some thunder, anything to make it sound nice.
Yeah.
I want to
That
be in,
might be a
I
good
want to
idea
be in
for
that
us
room.
moms.
I want to be in that room right now.
We could have all bought one with our wellness stipend.
Exactly.
Well, I have to put a wish list together. I think that could be like a really good idea, maybe even for like us as a parent. Again, kind of making sure that we put our oxygen masks on ourselves first, so we could be in a position to take care of our kiddos.
Yeah.
Next time you buy your kids shoes, or hopefully yourself shoes, grab that shoe box and fill it with some things that you like. Right? So it could be you pick up a couple nail polishes on sale, right? In colors that maybe you wouldn't normally use. Some really great chocolates, some of your favorite tea, whatever. And if you could kind of find that and put it in a place where your kids won't find it, and or right, like put a label on the outside like toilet paper. Something your kids aren't going to, right? They're never going to go into it. And then you're ready when you need, and then it kind of becomes, instead of this like, I don't know, like it's not a big thing. It's like, I'm going to get myself a treat, or I'm going to do something for myself that's kind of little, and you don't have to think about it too much. Yeah.
I love putting adult coloring books and pencils. I love, and my daughter and I will do it together. Being able to just sit and color really is therapeutic.
It's what's interesting. My husband and I were trying to do that like a year or two ago. Just let's sit and do this. And he was holding his pencil so tight, it broke.
Oh no.
I'm like this is not the point of this exercise. I'm like, you are little. You might need more than just a coloring book.
Yeah.
But really, it is.
You might be a little
I
beyond.
know. I'm like, seriously, like calm down. But yeah, he needs to find other things in his box. He needs to have his own box, and his box might be, hey, I'm going to go out to the garage and work on my boat or work on my car or something. But I love that idea of, and even words of affirmation, like put little notes in there to yourself, like little Post-it notes in a little nice envelope, and then open it up and say, oh, you are a good mom. You are doing great. So I love that. I'm gonna find. I think I have my shoebox from my sneakers I bought from my wellness site. So I think I still have that.
There you go. Well, I'm always playing with something. So I have my my little slinky that I brought back, right? That I brought back from the conference. And you guys got me this when we were at the Federation of Families conference last year. And so if you're ever listening to a podcast and you hear a weird noise, that's probably just me doing my little spinny thing. Yeah, I have a lot of like fidgets.
This
sitting
one's just
around.
like a calming strip
This one.
that you can
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, this was at the conference too.
And we should definitely encourage parents to have this stuff written into their child's IEP. I know that for a while, and you may have an old school teacher who's going to be like, oh, then they're going to be so focused on playing with whatever, then they're not going to. Yeah, you know what? It may be a novelty the first time or two where they'll be playing with it and maybe they won't listen, but eventually the novelty will wear off and they won't be paying attention. They'll just be doing, they'll just be moving. And if that's what they need to do to pay attention, I always ask people, what's the goal? What is the end result that you want? And if the end result that you want is that my child sit relatively still, focus, and not bother their classmates, then having something like this available to them may be it.
I think that that's something that comes with us educating our schools and our teachers and even other parents, because I know that that was really hard for my husband to understand, that something fidgety or sounds like music will help them to do their homework or be more productive in school, right? Because it's like, no, that's distracting them. You cannot have music. I'm like, no, it's a different way of learning. They are more productive when they're doing something with their hands or listening. So we have always like encouraged our teachers to, put something into her IEP that would allow it. And I actually just took a note just last month to encourage like those breaks, anxiety breaks, be able to get up, walk around, go see the SAP team, something to be able to refocus.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that has to go from, from elementary to middle to high school, and as everything changes in their life and their bodies, their hormones, everything, things are a little different. So yes, these things have to follow them. It's not just for, a younger child. So I like that.
And I think that old school teachers, remember, like back in the day, maybe when we were a little younger, people would say, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket all the time. And we're like, okay, look, calculator. I want to go find all those teachers and be like, see? But we do use these things in our work naturally anymore. In open floor plan offices, it's not unusual for people to have some kind of headphones on and be playing some kind of music to kind of drown out other people's noise. I remember my son coming home from school one day and he was like in a huff. He was like, Mom, I was trying to take my test today and the other kids kept doing this. I'm like, doing what? And he took a pencil and he put it down. And the sound of the pencil being put down, picture a classroom of 20 kids, everybody's putting their pencil down in between. Like, okay, yeah, I get if that would catch my radar and be on my radar, I can see that would be annoying. And so if you have any kind of test anxiety, anything that kind of takes your attention away, if you could put some headphones on and you can listen to the sound of rain or a coffee shop if they don't want you listening to music. Like, we know classical music is good for the brain, but anything like that we can do to help our kiddos, and again, put it into an IEP. But I think we're missing the boat if we only let our children with IEPs or 504 plans put headphones on. If you're so worried about them putting answers to a test on a recording, then offer them something so that they could put on headphones and that they can listen to it. Or put on some like light music in the background so that those noises, those little distracting noises, don't bother everyone.
And I do remember having that test anxiety when you were, in school. Everybody else is done and you hear their pencils go down. And I'm like, I'm on question 5. And all of a sudden, so it would have been nice, but yeah.
The clock ticking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, and part of what I said yesterday, because they were talking about autism classes or classes for people with, or rooms for people with autism, and how they have a lot of these things built in, where they have maybe different kind of, I know my daughter's a pre-K teacher. On her, one of her like wish lists that she ended up getting was a wiggle chair. And so you could sit on the chair, but the chair moves. And one of the things we know about inclusion is when we fully include children with disabilities in the classroom, it benefits all students in the classroom. So a teacher having to pre-teach or reteach in addition to their regular teaching is good for all the students. So this kind of stuff, everybody can throw headphones on, everybody can have a fidget so that your particular child isn't standing out, could be initially distracting for a teacher. But again, at the end of the day, what's important, that they're paying attention and like not like using it to whack their neighbor, you know. And then you deal with that on an individual basis. But if it's good for someone with an IEP, it will likely be beneficial to the entire class. So go ahead and just make it an open thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We did that for my son when he was still ambulatory, stretches.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to get up. So he wouldn't be, the only person in the class. Okay, I've got to get up and stretch, to relieve my muscles and my anxiety. And so the whole class did. And nobody really knew. The kiddos didn't know it was for him, but it was written into his IEP. The teacher knew. And that's just what we did, a couple times a day.
Love that. And I bet you the classroom was maybe a little bit better behaved overall because they got those wiggles out
Mhm.
in a planned way.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. Well, do we have any other tips before we knock off, ladies?
I've learned a lot myself. So I was writing some notes down for my families that I have to talk to.
Well, that's the great thing. That's why we wanted to record these, because whenever we get together, we share ideas. Some things, I always like to share things that I did wrong, so people don't have to make my mistakes and kind of learn what I learned from doing things wrong, or things that we learned from the other families that we work with. The families that we work with teach us so much.
Mhm.
And they share like, well, this is what we're doing right now, and it worked for a while, but now they're a little older, so we need something else. So sometimes FSPs will kind of work to help them brainstorm to adapt that to an older child, but we now also learned a great technique to share with people. So I love it when we can kind of learn from each other and then share it with everybody.
Absolutely.
Wow. All right, ladies. Well, thanks so much for your time, and have a great rest of your week. And thanks everybody for listening.
Have a great night.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.